There we go. All right. Hello, and welcome back to Listen Up Startups as we kick off season 2. I am very excited to have Jonathan from StartPR and Briefly here with me today. As you all know from listening to the podcast before, some of the reasons that we got this podcast started were to give entrepreneurs and founders a platform to tell their story, to really showcase how they are out in the field every day, disrupting and changing things, and also to cast a vision for how the future of business could look different, maybe be easier to navigate, more humane in its ecosystems. So I'm really excited to speak with you today about what you're doing. Without stealing too much of your thunder, I definitely see a use case for myself as a solopreneur in what you do. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about just what you're out there doing?
So I founded two PR businesses, both which were designed to try and provide solutions to people that couldn't afford traditional PR agency support. So I've come from a traditional PR agency background. I'm in a relationship with a journalist. I saw the problems on both sides.
Right.
And one day I thought, hang on, there's got to be a solution for small businesses to be able to get PR support without having to spend £2,000-3,000 a month to do that. So out came Briefly, a DIY. We originally called it DIY PR, a platform that you could come on board, get help to do the work that you couldn't do, save yourself time, but essentially make PR scalable, which in an agency setting it isn't. So lots of different iterations, and we've ended up with what we've got today, which we're very happy with, which is essentially 2 services: press release writing, press release distribution, and then we're creating a suite of tools that essentially mimic what a lot of PR people would do, but giving the tools to the user to be able to do that work themselves.
Cool.
And then we've also evolved into creating an agency freelancer network hybrid, that as people have grown out of just doing press release distribution and want a little bit more hands-on agency type support, they're able to now get access to industry-specific freelance PRs, and actually use them, but within an agency setting. So that allows them to access freelancers across the world in different sectors with different skill sets, but at a day rate rather than a monthly retained agency fee.
It's very cool. And just, to kind of put this in context with my entrepreneurial journey. So I started out in big corporate working for Fortune 500 companies, and then broke out with a small team of rebels to start our own HR tech company back in 2012. And each of my startup adventures up to this point, I've been part of a founding team in the technology space, and we've raised considerable funds for those things. And so we had these very big marketing budgets pretty much straight out of the gates to work with. The Humane Startup adventure has been different because this is me as a solopreneur, and I'm self-funding. Mm-hmm. And when I can remember making that decision about like, oh crap, like what do I do now? I know I need to establish credibility in this new space. I started toying around with big research projects that had like £10,000+ price tags on them, and I ultimately made the decision to hire an agency. But that's put a huge strain on my financial runway, because it was just like my little nest egg and then my revenue that have funded all of this. And that's taken a huge portion of my budget up to now. So, if I could rewind and go back in time, talk me through this approach and like why PR is so important for somebody who's just starting out, and then how that journey can look different exactly, both from like maybe a budget standpoint and then also like from a day-to-day execution standpoint.
Well, it's like you just said, credibility.
Yeah.
Right? You're starting out, you've had your career, you've had your areas of expertise, you've probably made your name in certain sectors, and now you're going off to do something else. So you come with a little bit of credibility already in that space. But why should a business buy from you or work with you or trust what you're now doing without having any proof that what you've done up till now has been the right thing to do? So it's particularly in the agency world, clients are all you've really got to show for your work. You can have the best ideas, but unless you've done it for a client and actually shown that work, trying to win more business is very difficult.
Yeah.
And you find that 5 years later, once you've had all this great work, clients just seem to come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But at the beginning, they're almost, where are they?
Yeah.
And so in any business, when you're trying to get customers to buy from you or to invest in you or whatever your business offers, having some sort of proof that what you do is good helps. And the media is the strongest way to do that. They have editorial control. We get into various conversations, arguments with people about news wires, because obviously a lot of people think when they write a press release and they send it out that gets published and then that gives them credibility. But a press release, if it's republished in itself, is really just an advertorial. This is what you've wanted to say about your business, and now someone else is just republishing that. So where we try and position our business is in the media relations space. So we are allowing you to share your ideas with real journalists who can then give what they're writing their own editorial perspective. And if they have then done their research into your press release and into your ideas and spoken to you and interviewed you or whatever it might be, when they then write about you, that gives you some credibility because they've done their research and they're now saying, we believe in what we're saying about this person.
Right.
And so then it depends what they write about you. It could be that you've just launched something new, and so they're saying, great, look at this new thing that's on the market. That doesn't necessarily add credibility, but that's then when brand awareness comes in. So as PR is also a great platform to get your brand noticed by a lot more people. Now, PR works in everything from a small online blog all the way up to, national newspapers, The Times, The Guardian, etc. And the higher up that seems to go, the harder it seems to be to get into those publications. And that's where PR comes in. So in the agency world, the PR agents have their relationships and they will speak to journalists and say, we've got this client and we'd love for you to write about them and here's everything we know about them. And then often that'll get written about. I mean, most people say to me, how did that company get into that newspaper? 9 times out of 10, they've had a PR person helping them. But they're expensive. They work in big agencies. And you mentioned just now that as soon as you take that risk, you're now paying a lot of money every month. And that's great if you've got lots to say or you fit into lots of different sectors and there's plenty of content and news flow and you're launching new products or you've got lots of ideas or you want to do lots of thought leadership and put your commentary out there. But not everybody wants to do that. A brand that I work a lot with, a company called Pure Lake Skincare up in the Lake District, they're always up for anything. They've been on TV, they've been in national newspapers, interviewed around the troubles they faced in COVID, everything. They don't mind putting themselves out there a little bit and they've benefited from that. But other brands, they don't necessarily want to be outspoken. They don't necessarily know if what they've got to say is right or out there. And so then they restrict themselves a little bit. And so an agency is not great for them because the agency would come in with all these opportunities and then they'd be saying, oh, well, we don't want to do that and we can't do that and we shouldn't say this. And so...
And I'm sure there's an element of, at times, like there are bandwidth issues. I know that's something that I've experienced because I'm a one-woman show right now. I would have phenomenal opportunities coming into me, but it's just like, Jesus, if I respond to all of this, if I write all of this, then I'm not going to get to these really important revenue driving functions. And so then it became a matter of like, okay, well, can you help me write this? And now
so that's exactly
price points have gone up,
That's exactly where our business went from Briefly to StartPR. So Briefly is a DIY platform, but where we help people out is writing. So most business owners are not journalists.
Yeah.
They're not writers. They probably didn't study English or, they could probably write something, but it wouldn't be as effective as writing a proper press release. Press release is an art. It's a very specific type of thing. And so what we've said is, well, let's use journalists to write those press releases. And this is where from my partner, we said, well, look, journalists are trained writers that a lot of them are sat there with free time in the evenings. Let's give them a platform to work on these brands. And so what we say to our users is, use a journalist from your sector who will write your press release for you. So who better to write it than the person that you're going to then be sending it to? So it's then written exactly how they'd want to receive it. It's written newsworthy, exactly the way that a journalist, either the one that's writing it or anyone else in that sector, would want to receive a press release. Therefore, hopefully it has a better chance of being used and being written about. Also within our platform, we offer a press briefing. So you can actually speak to the journalist before they write your press release to discuss the idea. Is it newsworthy enough? Are there other aspects that I didn't think about including in this is where the name Briefly comes from. You submit a brief on the platform and this journalist gets to work writing it. But what if, let's have a discussion around that before you go ahead and write it, just in case there's some other ideas. So that's an add-on that users and our premium subscribers benefit from anyway. And then often the press release that comes out of that is way more effective and way better than that user would have been able to
do themselves.
And it saved them time.
Yeah.
Because within 2 minutes they've gone on, they answer 4 questions on our platform, upload some images, upload some links to images or to any content they've got on their website. And then the journalists do their own research. They go on your website, they go on your social media, they find out all the info. All you've told them is, what's my news hook? What's the key information that you're trying to tell the media about within that?
Yeah.
And then the journalist goes away and does their job. And you get back a press release that has told the story you wanted to tell without having to do all the work and the research yourself.
Nice.
And then the other part of PR is actually getting that out to the world.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of time. If you go around trying to Google, well, which journalists write about my sector, and you'll probably know 1 or 2 because you read certain magazines or whatever it might be, but there are probably 50, 60,000 journalists on our database.
Yeah.
And so you can't know all of them. Again, they're all across different sectors. But on average, a user, when they send a press release out with us, probably goes out to about 600 or 700 journalists. And there's something we probably should mention is we're building tech that is way more strategic in who we send it to. So we say that we're powered by journalists because we were built by journalists. Our consulting team was journalists. I'm the only one on the team who's not a journalist. And so we want to make life easier for journalists. We know they get a lot of press releases. We know they get a lot of content through that's really not relevant to them. And I know this from friends in the media, from my 10 years in PR. I have got lots of friends that are journalists, and they all say we get a lot of press releases. So what I didn't want to do was just, bombard them with more.
Yeah.
I wanted what they got through Briefly from our users to be much more accurate. And so we're building sort of AI, but machine learning within our platform so that when press releases go out, they're only going to the journalists that have either written about something like that before or have shown interest in that sector. So that they're not getting content that isn't relevant to them.
Yeah.
But that user literally goes on, says what sector their business is in, and then our tech builds that mailing list for them, and they don't need to go and do their research on who would want to read that press release.
That is so cool. Obviously,
you do have to then handle any inbound reaction afterwards, but that's great. You've clicked the button and now you're getting media requests.
Yeah.
Whereas before, the amount of work that would have to go in to get to that point would have been
substantial.
Yeah.
And this is, fantastic for our audience in terms of something very tangible that they can take away to make their life easier, a change in process, some streamlining, especially as we head into the new year. But I know my folks are going to be also very curious about your individual entrepreneurial journey. What this has been like for you, some of maybe the biggest challenges that you've faced in establishing Briefly and then evolving into StartPR. So would love to pick your brain on that one too.
You'll know as well. It's not every day is hard.
Yeah.
We've bootstrapped the business from the beginning. We haven't raised any money. We haven't borrowed any money. Actually, that's within COVID, we did the bounce back loan scheme, which has actually been really helpful. That's definitely helped us out.
And for those folks who don't know what that is, would you mind elaborating on that?
It was a government-backed loan scheme that you could borrow a certain amount of money depending on your revenue and profits during COVID, so that and then you can pay it back over time at a fairly low interest, which we are now doing.
Yeah.
But at that time, it was access to money that I wasn't able to get elsewhere. And a bit like you, I'd sort of saved up my nest egg. I was like, right, I'm going to spend this on my project. I think my biggest problem has been developers, because I am not a developer. I'm not a software developer. I've learned a lot about it, but even now I'm still confused at half the things they send me. But I can't, developers in the UK are really expensive. I've got friends that are running multi-million-pound businesses or a senior in multi-million-pound businesses, and even they are shocked at the prices they're having to pay for UK-based developers.
Yeah.
So we had to think, well, how can we work around this? Because I didn't have an unlimited amount of reserves. I didn't have an investor saying, here's half a
couple of
million
million.
pounds, let's see how you get on.
Yeah.
I was also working on my other businesses, and I had another PR agency before, which I've now exited. And, it's finding time in the day to do all of this. So I was like, right, well, we need to, who out there would want to work on something like this and help me build it, but isn't going to cost me the earth. So we actually worked with students.
Nice.
So we worked with students that were on various computer science courses, and they got involved, and we paid them. We paid them. I still think a lot of money, but in terms of that industry, it seemed fair. And they would work for us for maybe 6 or 9 months during their last year, and then obviously they then go off and get jobs. And we've had 4 or 5 developers that have gone off and worked for really awesome companies. I can't take any credit for that. It's all of them. But it meant that we could build an MVP that was functional, that was built well by great developers. And they've not all been UK based either. I've had developers in the Philippines. I've had developers in Spain, all over.
Right.
So there's been a financial challenge of, okay, right, I need to find another $2,000, $3,000 this month to pay for those developers, as well as paying the bills at home and, thinking PR as an industry is really bad at PRing itself.
Yes.
So how do I get the word out that we've got this new business for people to do their own PR? And we've tried all sorts of different stuff. I've hired lead gen people. I've hired agencies. I've done all these different things to try and get our own name out there, because it's quite very difficult to PR a PR startup. The best route we found is Google Ads. So I hired a guy who does some Google Ads. And again, he was quite young. We've always worked with quite young people, not on purpose, but they've always been early in their career, probably because they're a little bit more affordable. But that I found that they're also really keen to work really hard to impress, to try out new stuff. They're really interested in their industry, so they're working with like up-to-date technology, and they've got up-to-date ideas, and they're really interested in how that sector's moving. So I think my biggest challenge has been either financial or finding decent people to help me build this sort of vision that I've had and get it off the ground. And now it's sort of up and running, and we've got users, and then it's sort of self-fueled after that. But.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously we're in a tough situation here in the UK, and I got quite a few listeners in the US as well. I know it's not a heck of a lot better in the States. And so have you been feeling like the crunch of that sort of people categorizing PR as a nice to have and not a
it's
critical?
Definitely the first thing to go and the last thing to come on. Which there are people, I don't know if it was Bill Gates or someone who quoted it, said if I had £1 left, I'd spend it on good PR.
Right.
Which I think makes a lot of sense once you're massive. But we've had that same problem as well. It's like prioritizing so many. You just mentioned it just now. It's like you've got all these other things you need to do in the day. You don't have time to do PR. For our users, we've tried to say, well, look, PR is now not a big part of your day, so we've saved you the time. We've brought the cost down, so it's now no longer a big cost in your business as well. So hopefully people will see Briefly as let's get that in early and start getting our word out. But 8 out of 10 people that I speak to say, oh, would love to start doing some PR once we've raised some money or once we've done this. But actually a lot of investors want to see that you're already being written about and that you've already got some press coverage and good press coverage about you. So it is a bit of a catch-22.
Yeah, and that's something that I certainly learned the hard way. I think when we set up our first company, Mobolt, back in 2012, we allocated most of our money to development of the technology. So we had 35 people when we sold to Indeed, and only 5 of us were like non-engineering staff, and we didn't even have like an official marketing or PR person. You basically had 2 people out in the field that were responsible for RevGen, and that made our life unnecessarily hard. And that same co-founding team got back together for the programmatic job advertising platform that is headquartered in the States, but is continuing to grow here in Europe. And I think we took a similar approach for like the first half of that company being up and running, and then we got really bullish on marketing in the sort of second half of that adventure, and it changed everything. It really did, and our CEO was in his heart a product guy, and he does understand the technology really well, and that's where he enjoyed spending his time. So really had he just hated, even being called the CEO. He didn't want that attention. He didn't want to be out in front of, people working the circuit. So it took quite a bit of like strong arming from a personality standpoint to get him out there. But doing that changed everything. And then the next thing you know, Jovio's being, shortlisted for like HR Tech Startup of the Year and, featured in Inc. and Forbes and all of these. And it just made the RevGen engine so much easier to run, having him sort of accept that mantle of the face of the company and getting our message and why we were different and why people should care about what we were doing out there. So that was, I think, going through those two side-by-side experiences was a big part of why when I went out on my own, one of the first things I did was hire an agency, even though it was very expensive.
But that's the thing you see is that there are stages when you need good PR and there are stages when you don't necessarily need to do PR. And there are stages when there's lots to say and there are stages when there's nothing to say. And this is where we try to fill the gap, is that once you hire an agency, whether it's on a 6-month, 12-month retainer, I mean, every contract is only as long as its notice period, so you can get out if you want to, but you're signed up for the year. Their plan is then, right, we need something new every month to start pushing to press. And so they start asking you for more stuff. So you end up getting distracted from what you're trying to do just to give them news so that they're using their time that you're paying them for to actually go out and do work. Whereas what we're saying is, Briefly, there's a pay-as-you-go tool, there's a small monthly subscription, and then there's a larger monthly subscription. And depending on what requirements you have, depends on which one you go for. So if you want to send out a few press releases and do some media relations for a couple of months to announce the launch and then go quiet for 3 or 4 months, it's not going to cost you any money in those 3 or 4 months.
Right.
And then when you want to pick up again, you just go back on the platform that you're signed up to and off you go. But there are there are 2 types of PR. There's reactive and proactive PR. I mean, there are probably lots more, but they're the 2 most obvious ones. So proactively, you might not have something to go out with all the time, and that's no problem. So use Briefly when you do have something to say. But under our subscription, you can get media alerts. So this is when journalists are saying, I'm looking for a company that's doing this, or I'm looking for somebody to talk about their experience in this sector or this business. So under that subscription, which are £21 a month, not bad really, you are able to then get those media alerts so that when somebody is asking for something that you can do or you can answer, you can then still have that opportunity to get some PR, even though you're not going out with proactive pitching.
That is so cool. And I love the flexibility there. And that was something when I set up Humane Startup, that was one of the things that I wanted to offer, is almost that like consulting and coaching on a subscription basis. So it takes that panic away of like, I've got to commit 6 months worth of budget to this or 12 months worth of budget to this, because the hashtag startup life is volatile and you never know what's around the corner or when you're going to need to pull back, or you've got, some extra funds that you weren't expecting, so you can push forward with things. And I think freeing up that headspace and I'm big into containing the nervous system, just like relaxing our entrepreneurs a little bit, that it's like, okay.
Well, you don't have to be at your desk from 6 a.m. until 10 p.m. I mean, you got all these sort of business influencers online saying, if you're not at your desk, you're not winning. It's like, come on, seriously.
This kills me. This absolutely kills me. Like, it feels almost like predatorial. I've had a...
Well, it is. Because they're benefiting off of that. Because then you're signing up to their services, you're signing up to their coaching courses that tell you how to work harder. And, they're making money out of your demise. Of you killing yourself at the desk every day.
And just being stressed out and burning out. And I think before we started recording, we chatted about we're both parents, in addition to running a business and a couple of businesses. You've got 2 kids, I've got 3. You can't, like, I'm sorry, posting every day at 8 a.m. with X amount of hashtags, like, it's just not going to happen.
We've done basically 0 social media. We just said, right, I'd love to have this awesome. When I started out, I was like, I'm going to have all this video content, and I've got a friend who's a video director and producer and editor, and he's going to make all this amazing content for me. And I just thought, that money just needs to go to getting customers in who are looking for our business.
Yeah.
We identified that early on, that customers with intent, people who are looking for how do I send a press release? Let's just get them in and prove that our product works. And then when we've got revenue and when we've got time, which never seems to happen, then we can think about. So we've managed to get to where we are now. We're not that as big as I'd love. Maybe I thought we would be after the time we've been going, but I've got kids. I've got other life. I've ended up starting another business off the back of Briefly that happened organically, and you have to be willing to sort of roll with the punches and accept the changes as they come along. But you can't do everything.
No,
and you don't need to do everything.
No, and I'd love to spend a little bit more time with that. I think again, another one of the reasons that I started Humane Startup and also this podcast was just to plug the gaps for support that I wish I had, and that I wish, like, my initial founding teams, they're my friends. Like, we broke out together because we had good, strong relationships, and especially with the first company, that was, I don't think any of us were really prepared for what that did to us mentally and physically, for the impact that it had on our relationships and on our mental and physical health. And so I wanted to find a way to upskill myself so that I could merge like therapeutic intervention with, strong strategy and consulting skills from having been in the trenches a couple of times, so that people didn't burn out and didn't blow their relationships up while they tried to like tackle some of the biggest, challenges that humanity is facing. And I'm always curious to sit down with other entrepreneurs and just kind of find out practically what you weave into your life. I don't like the word balance because I don't think that exists. There are too many plates to have spinning equally at all times. But like, from a very practical standpoint, how do you prioritize where you spend your time?
Yeah, I mean, that is, every day is different, right?
Yeah.
It depends. Like today I'm here, tomorrow I'm off somewhere else. You just don't know what's going to happen the next day in the startup world. It's okay. We talk about this sort of startup world. We're all trying to just start businesses, right? Some of the businesses want to help people. Some of them, they want to help themselves.
Yeah.
I think that on a slight tangent, a good business is one that helps other people while helping yourself, right? And we've tried to create a business that, we knew there was a problem. And so we've tried to create a business that fixes that problem. We're not trying to change an entire industry. We're not trying to say that PR agencies are bad.
Yeah.
We're just trying to say that for those people that wasn't right, here's another option. And as that's also merged into StartPR, the same thing has been, how do we support the people that are helping us grow our business? So by supporting them, they want our business to grow. And so in answer to your question, I've been really lucky that actually my close friendship group and slightly wider circle of friends are all innovative thinkers, entrepreneurial. One of them's got a really cool bag startup brand called M24. They've all been there. They've tried the difficult stuff. They've made the mistakes. And so then we'll go out and have a social life. But our social life, half of our evening out is spent talking about our businesses and problems we face.
That community aspect is massive.
But they're also your best friends.
Yeah.
So then you can go off and talk about something completely irrelevant, but they all want to know how your business is going. You want to know how theirs is going. And they're all different sizes. The bag business has been running for about 10 years and they're doing amazing stuff. And they've got this huge online social community, and that's how he gets his sales. Another friend works in the telecom sector. You wouldn't think could learn anything from him, and yet you do, because he's working on national campaigns and national projects, and it's everything. Everybody's experience is different, but it all helps to be in the word you use, therapeutic. Well, they're having trouble too. They're making more money, but they're also having difficulties, and how did they get over that? And then they'll give you advice on what they think you should do. At the end of the day, obviously you have to make your own decision, but having that social group that understands the pressures you're going through has made a huge difference. If you're the only one trying to start a business and they're all going off to work 9 to 5 and they're meeting in the pub, you're going to find it very difficult to get on board with that, because actually some days you do find yourself working till 10 o'clock at night. And maybe that's where that element of bravado from those online guys has come from. It's like, sometimes you do need to put in those extra hours, but also, like you said, I've got 2 kids. I want to spend time with them. I want to see them grow up. I want to be able to, and I have to sometimes pick them up from nursery if their mum's busy doing something else. You've just got to get stuck in. But it's finding that sort of do you know what? I could do another 2 hours, but actually I'm just not.
Not going to. Yeah.
And maybe that's detrimental to the business to some people's eyes, but actually I've got a life to lead and I need to be healthy in myself. And
yeah, and I love that because I think in my experience it was releasing some of that conditioning and retraining myself to be okay that like not every decision I made had to optimize profits. I could also optimize for other areas of my life, and that optimizing for my relationships was a good thing for my business and for my personal life in most cases.
otherwise, why work for yourself?
Right, exactly.
What benefits do you get? You're more stressed, you have less money.
Yeah.
So what's the benefit of working for yourself? You might as well go back and work for someone else.
Exactly. And I'm really pleased for you that you have that community, because I know a lot of folks don't, especially if it's their first time, breaking out into an entrepreneurial adventure. I think a lot of folks, they get frustrated with corporate and they go out on their own, and they've still got friends who are back at the company that they've left, and that pull is still like, hey, what do you think you're doing going off there and following your dreams?
And that's what we found with StartPR, this network of freelance PRs. A lot of them have come out of agency life. They've maybe fallen out of love with the company they're working for, or the level they've got to, and they feel like there must be more to this. They're working a lot of hours, maybe not earning as much as they think they should be, and they think, actually, I'm going to give this a go on my own.
Yeah.
But they don't just want to go and sit at home on the kitchen table and not speak to anyone. PR people are social. That's how we work. And so this network has provided people with a community. So they can come onto our platform and they can share ideas, ask each other how to solve certain problems. But when they're also going to pitch for clients, they're part of a bigger agency and community and network. So those clients can say, well, actually, you're not on your own. One thing that's been really interesting in that is that we offer all of our freelancers 2 weeks annual leave, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
If you're a freelancer, you never get holiday.
No.
If you do, you stop earning.
Yep.
And so by working with us, we then use other freelancers in the network to pick up your work for at least 2 weeks of the year, so that you can go off and have a break and go on holiday and know that your clients are going to be looked after. And their clients love that, because they know that their account's being looked after and that their person that's working for them is happier and that sort of thing.
Very cool. And I think one of my favorite parts about hosting this podcast is just hearing the honest stories from entrepreneurs and from founders. I think, particularly on social, where it's really easy to spin a story, there is maybe an unrealistic picture being painted of what it means to run your own business, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head earlier. Like, you're working harder and you're making less money, right? Like, that's the reality.
If you put that on Instagram, no one's going to
right. No one's gonna sign up for that. But there are some perks to this and some reasons that you do it. But I think it is really, really important for particularly young folks who are trying to decide, like, what is the right journey for me, or folks who are trying to answer that question for themselves. Like, should I become a founder? Should I start my own business? To hear the real story, because it is hard, and it brings up a lot of stuff that you have to confront about yourself, about your relationships, and it's not always pretty tackling that. And there is no 7-step process that ensures success in 6 weeks and 10x growth, and it just doesn't exist.
Well, I remember speaking to an advisor, and I was speaking to him at the time. I was saying, how do I get investment?
Yeah.
And he said, well, you need to put together your plans. And I was like, okay, great. So I did all that. And I spoke to someone else and I said, okay, I've put together my 5-year forecast. But I was like, I didn't know what numbers to put after month 2, let alone year 2 or year 5.
Yeah.
And he said, just make it look as big as possible. You don't have to actually get there. You just have to make it look like you could get there. And then investors will be interested in that. And I think that maybe that time has gone.
Yeah.
I think that was a couple of years ago when money seemed to flow. And I think investors are a bit tighter on that now.
Yeah.
But I something didn't feel right about that, because I was like, I don't think I'm going to hit that. I didn't back myself.
Well, and then the pressure ends up on the rev gen to go make that crazy,
right.
rev
and so
gen
then
engine
maybe you
to
do end
it.
up spending 15 hours a day at your desk just trying to satisfy somebody else's
this
requirement.
Arbitrary number.
And actually you're back at your desk again. You haven't benefited. And I think you've got to be willing to and happy to say, look, okay, do you know what? Maybe I'm not going to hit my target this year, but look at all the great stuff I have made. I've built a product. I've got customers. Those customers have left me reviews that have said our business is great. We know we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
If it takes me 2 years to get where I thought I'd be after one, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you've got bills to pay. If you're gonna, if I have any advice, start a business before having kids.
Yes, right.
It just adds so many more
Or
pressures
with toddlers at
afterwards.
home, let's just do that. But no, 100%.
But then if you needed a stick to say, go out and earn money, that's it.
Well, when those invoices are looming for private
Yeah.
school fees, it's amazing what you can
Suddenly
make
you've got
happen.
more business. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. But no, I do love the transparency in this conversation, because it is important for folks to have a real picture. And I think, one of the things that I coach folks on is to establish non-revenue based KPIs. So you can, yes, you have to track profitability, and anybody who starts a business, unless you're a not-for-profit, is looking for profitability. But it is very important to have other measures of success that can keep you going when things don't go to plan, because despite our best laid intentions, there are uncontrollables in your revenue setup, right?
Came along
exactly.
and literally killed off
everything.
everything.
And government policy, there's like geopolitics, there's so much that goes into this that will be out of your control. And it is important, I think, for anybody who is opting into this journey to get clear on their values and put measures into their reviews.
Like, why are you doing this? Why are you starting?
Stay focused
Don't
on this
forget
why,
that.
and find something measurable in that you can feel good about once every 90 days when you pull together that review, or when you're going into, your annual reviews. And I mean, gosh, even if you're facing a pivot, like if you need to decide to open up a new revenue line or whatever the case may be, you can always come back to, like, is this a values aligned decision that I'm making, even if I have to explain to somebody why this won't be the most profitable thing in the short term. Somebody an investor maybe, that might not be happy about that decision, but just give yourself something other than strictly profit to anchor into. And I think values are a strong way to do that.
I suppose as well, you have to look at how excited you were when you started the business, right? You were excited when you saw a logo. You were excited when you saw your first MVP appear from the developer. And those feelings, you mustn't forget those, because actually we're developing new, not always new products on the platform, but new ways of running what's already on there to make it more efficient, or to make it easier for us to operate it. Because obviously, as with a lot of these tech startups, there's a lot of manual work behind the scene. It looks automatic up front, but there's still, until you get to that point, you're still doing a lot of manual stuff behind the scenes. So when we make something automated, I see that as a success, because I've now got time back. Haven't necessarily made any more money. We're still generating the same revenue on subscriptions or on sales, but now I've got an extra half an hour a day to spend doing something else. So that is a success.
Yeah.
So if you can look at those and go, this is what I used to get really excited about. If you only then turn around and go, well, I'm only worried if we make 5% more profit next month than we made this month, you're going to very quickly fall out of love with the business that you started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And I guess a parting word of wisdom, is there any one piece of advice that you have for folks out there that are trying to answer that question, should I become a founder?
Do it, but just don't take all of that advice that you've heard everybody give and say, this is what a founder looks like.
Yeah.
Because every founder looks different, and every founder has their own family life and their own corporate life and their own friendship circle, and your journey is going to look very different to somebody else's. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to look like the typical founder that you see on social media, because they don't feel like that. They might look like that, but they don't feel like that. So just give yourself a chance to make mistakes, learn from them, of course, but just don't put so much pressure on yourself to hit those goals and those targets, because if you don't, you're going to very quickly feel demoralized.
Yeah.
Just find some, like you said, find some moments along the way that make it worth doing, and give yourself a chance to find your own way. Perfect.
And if folks are interested in working with yourselves, either through Briefly or through StartPR, how can they get in touch?
Briefly.app. You can get on there and you can get going straight away. And StartPR.io is the agency side. Or, you can find us on social medias. We don't do a lot, but we're on there, so you can contact us there. But we've got contact forms on the websites.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today. This was an incredibly valuable conversation. Thanks. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you do need some additional support on your journey, you can download our free app to tap into a whole host of tools to put in your self-therapy and self-development toolkit. We've rebranded that for 2023, so it is now known as the 7 Summits app, available on your phone store of choice, either Apple or Google. And you can always get in touch with me at www.humanestartup.com. I look forward to joining you all next week, and have a good day.